If you want to see more deer, find where they're eating. If you want to shoot more deer, find where they're bedding.
There is nothing more high impact than hunting these bedding areas, those buck bedding areas. So if I'm going to go in there, I know I've got a limited amount of cracks to pull this off.
This week on Deer and Deer Hunting TV, Dan Schmidt, he's in my neighborhood, Wyoming. Let's just see how he handles the sagebrush and prickly pears.
This is where it all begins.
My best hunting day ever. This is Deer and Deer Hunting TV. I'm going to tell you, if you're watching TV and hunting shows, you probably have been brainwashed to think that a bedding area is a specific little spot in the woods of a property, in the thick stuff of a property, certain features to it. Yeah, for those places, you know, for the core areas, the really big buck private land areas, the guys that have it all, that can do this land management stuff that you see, that stuff can be, you know, you can map that out pretty easily. But what about where you hunt? What about where I hunt? Public land, you have to look at things differently. Public land mostly is vast seas of nothingness. I grew up hunting in northern Wisconsin, basswood forests as far as the eye could see. And there's no topography, it's like there's a bunch of trees. You know, you get into a southern location, it could be a swamp so thick that you can't tell where the swamp begins and where the swamp ends. So how do you find a bedding area? Here's the key. Find the feeding areas. Again, can be difficult. The feeding areas can be hardwood mast, it could be clear-cut regeneration. You find those feeding areas and then you branch out. This is not an easy thing. You just do not walk out into the woods and say, yep, this is a bedding area. Yep, this is a buck bedding area. It doesn't work that way. Very seldom works that way. It doesn't for me. It takes time and repetition and knowing the property.
Scouting. It all comes down to trail cameras and first-hand observations and looking at the signs, clues, and signals out there.
A lot of it is going to be revealed in the sign. You're going to find scrapes and rubs, and that's going to help you identify where these bedding areas are. And you're going to look for those transition zones between those bedding areas and any food sources or where the does hang out.
This is going to seem a little goofy, but here's how I find bedding areas. Every single time I'm out there, when I find that one lone pretty good sized bed or two pretty good sized beds happen to be a scrape or a rub right nearby, is that proof that that was a mature buck that did it? No. But the absence of smaller beds indicates that it's not a family group. It's not a doe with fawns, so odds are better that it is a mature buck. And then if you can happen to find that great big track in it, well, again, no proof, but indicates it may be a mature buck. And then you throw that rub or scrape into it again. Not proof, but now all of a sudden, okay, I think we might be dealing with a buck bed. When that occurs, literally, assuming this is off season, literally squat down in that bed. Squat down in it on your knees and look around. out of all the places in this world this deer could have bedded, it chose this spot right here. Why? The more you can answer why, the more you can go ahead and predict without even seeing stuff where these bucks are bedding, based off of topography, off of aerial photography.
The ecotones, remember that word, ecotones. Ecotones are where overlapping areas of topography meet. It could be a hardwood ridge where it meets an evergreen plantation. It could be a clear cut that meets regrowth. Deer are creatures of the edge. So where you find edge, you're going to find food. Where you find food, you back yourself up. The deer are going to be bedding within proximity of that food. That's how you pinpoint bedding areas.
And that's where you set up.
Coming up on Deer and Deer Hunting TV.
So you've done some homework. You put your boots to the ground. You got out there. You've scouted. Now what?
There is nothing more high impact than hunting these bedding areas.
Don't hunt too close.
You're watching Deer and Deer Hunting TV. Deer and Deer Hunting is brought to you by Scent Killer Gold with Hunt Dry Technology Plus. Apply it, try it, and go hunt. Remington, America's oldest gunmaker. Get armed and deadly with Easton FMJ arrows. And by 10-Point Crossbow Technologies. There is no substitute. This segment of Deer and Deer Hunting is brought to you by Redneck Blinds.
So you've done some homework. You put your boots to the ground. You got out there. You've scouted. Now what?
Well, the first thing is you don't hunt too close, because that's that buck's refuge. That's his security, his sanctuary. And if you bump him, you blow him out, that stands a good chance it could change the pattern for the rest of the hunting season. So what do you want to do? You want to hunt edges. Now, I'm not saying staying right out on the field edge. I'm not a big proponent of hunting field edges, because one thing, they're hard to get in and out of at prime time when all the deer are there. But I like to go in one little hopscotch in, maybe 40 yards, maybe 100 yards into the woods, and find the best travel corridor possible.
Okay, it can be really dicey hunting bedding areas, and you're always taking a risk when you do it. In the mornings, you might be able to get away with getting in close to the bedding areas and hoping to catch the deer coming off of those food sources going back to the beds. But you need to get in there early. You need to get in there super early. And you really have to watch your entry. You need to know what the wind is doing, and you need to make sure that you don't spook any deer on your way in. That means you can't let your wind drift out into the food source. You need to pick a route that will get you into position without giving your position away.
I rarely hunt buck bedding areas. About the only time I do is when it is super high pressure. Super high pressure, these bucks, they just are not leaving these areas, period, until after dark. When that's the case, I'll go in during the off season, slap up a stand, either frankly covering his bed itself or covering the best entrance and exit trail there is to that bed. Get everything prepped, and then I'm gonna wait until just the peak scrape phase is dang near over, so that testosterone level is going up a bit. When you get that testosterone level up, all of a sudden now these bucks, they have the urge, the incentive to stay out a little bit later at night and to get up a little bit earlier in the evening. There is nothing more high impact than hunting these bedding areas, those buck bedding areas. So if I'm gonna go in there, I know I've got a limited amount of cracks to pull this off. My rule is if I don't get it done within 3 sits, I don't believe it's gonna happen. If I only have 3 cracks at this, I'm going to make sure that each one of them are high odds cracks. That means right phase of season, good deer movement weather day. I'm going to get in at least an hour before first light, because I have to beat him back to that bedding area, and I'm going to sit until I kill or dark, whichever comes first.
The best seasons and the best hunts come when you're hunting property that you're familiar with. You know, that happens with us when we're at home. we learn that land, and we really know how the deer interact on that property and how they use the property. On out-of-state hunts, this is obviously difficult because if you're going into a place for a first time, you don't know what you're getting into. You don't know how the deer behave, especially compared to how they behave where you're at home. One of my favorite destinations is Northeast Wyoming, and I've been going there for over 10 years. What I really like about Northeast Wyoming, especially the Devil's Tower area, you're dealing with unpressured deer in very large topography. Not a lot of development there. Deer can be deer, they can interact how they're going to interact when they want to, and they're going to move all day long. This is a really good place, especially for me, to learn deer behavior and bedding behavior, especially during the early season.
With a morning hunt, we're basically looking for them trails that are leading to the bedding area. You don't want to encroach too close. A lot of scouting, a lot of time watching that to get the stand placement just right. Just playing the wind a lot.
This segment of Deer and Deer Hunting is brought to you by Matthews.
Home sweet home. We show up at Ralph's, same old, same old. I'm very familiar with this land. I'm very familiar with the deer. So I know what we want to do. We want to set up in an area between bedding and feeding. This is money during the early season, especially out here in Northeast Wyoming. The biggest thing here in Northeast Wyoming is that the deer activity, for the most part, the good buck activity is going to be in the fringe hours of daylight. It's going to be early morning, it's going to be late afternoon. Our first spot is going to be a ground blind, right on the edge of a feeding area, transitioning from a bedding area. I knew we would see deer in this location. Okay, first night. Just got into camp. We're at Ralph Dampman's Trophy Ridge Outfitters, Northeast Wyoming. It's been really dry, but they just got some rain. And we got a fabulous alfalfa field. All these bigger bucks are bedded up this ridge. And Ralph said, keep on your toes. This is going to be really tough because we're going to have to see the bucks coming down. And if it's one we want to shoot, we got to get them before they get to the alfalfa because our wind is blowing straight out into the alfalfa. So you might look at this and say, oh man, that's like shooting fish in a barrel. The guy's already told you where the deer are coming from. You know where they're going to. You're going to pop up a blind and kill a deer. It's not that easy. It never is with whitetails, especially this hunt. Whitetails are whitetails. I don't care what you say. If they're wild deer, they're going to smell you. They're going to see you. They're going to spook. And you're not going to get a second chance if you spook one. It was a comedy of errors almost to say, and we got busted several times that first night. So that blind wasn't ruined. You know, some deer saw us and they kind of skidded off, and there was a lot of deer in front of us. We got out after dark, which is a key when you're hunting a ground blind. If you got deer in front of you, do not get out of that ground blind before dark, and definitely do not get out if there's deer in front of you. So we waited. That blind was going to still be a good spot. We were going to let that spot rest at least a day and go try another spot. Our backup plan was a morning spot in another transition area. Ralph drives us to the top of the, I'm going to call it a mountain. It's a huge ridge, very steep. I would not want to walk up it. And we have a spot in a transition area. This is a neat one that Ralph found. That transition area was a spot about 3/4 of the way between where that feeding area was in the late afternoon, alfalfa fields, big center pivot fields, and these deep lying pockets back in those ridges. We kind of went up a little side hill, not a lot of foot traffic in there. That's a good starting point. Second starting point, this was the first time it was hunted. So that's a key. So if you have spots like that where you can go in and, you know, I'm going to hunt that one time, first week of the season, that's really going to give you a leg up. And boy, did it give us a leg up on this hunt. Straight in front of us. Deer. Buck. Let's go back. Man! He's gonna go down right there. Stay right on him. Right there. He's going down right there. We did it. We did it. What a God-blessed morning. This is my favorite place on earth. The adrenaline dump starts now. Right on the turn point, sir. Yeah. You know, I started doing this about 20 years ago. And sometimes you get excited and, you know, you got to stop and remind yourself. But this isn't about religion, it's about respect, and it's about being thankful. So join me, would you? Dear Lord, thank you for this wonderful day. Thank you for this wonderful gift. May this buck's body nourish our bodies, and may his memory nourish our souls. And this we pray through Jesus' name. Amen. Awesome day.
Deer and Deer Hunting is brought to you by Thompson Center, America's master gunmakers. Sever broadheads, straight through it. Hunter Safety System, stay connected. And by Cuddyback, CuddyLink, 16 cameras, 1 cell plan, $10 per month.
Let's go through the FMJ lineup of arrows from Easton today. Now, in case you don't know, an FMJ arrow starts with a carbon core foundation. Now, carbon is lightweight and strong, so that keeps the arrow straight, and because it's lightweight, it keeps your speed up. You might ask, well, why the aluminum? Well, that does some really interesting things. Aluminum is the most consistent material that we can make an arrow out of, so you're going to have high level of accuracy by adding that aluminum. When you put the two materials together, they work in concert, so you get the strength of the carbon and the precision of the aluminum working together for really what's the most perfect hunting arrow we have today. Now, the FMJ comes in several different models, and I'll just walk through those with you, going from the largest down to the smallest. So the FMJ lineup starts with the 6mm, that's this one right here. As you work down in diameter, we have the 5mm. This comes in both the standard 5mm and a match grade. That's got the highest level of tolerances, so you're going to get more accuracy with that, the match grade 5mm. Then as you work down, this one is the 4mm. This is the smallest of the line. That has the most penetration because it's the smallest diameter, the least amount of friction. Now we have a brand new one out, and this was really, really innovative. This is called the T64 FMJ. It's 6mm at the front, and it tapers down to a 4mm at the back. You might ask, why do you do that? Well, up front, what we found is that higher FOC means more accuracy. And because this is wider at the front, you have more weight forward. That's going to give you a high level of accuracy. It's built-in FOC, and you're going to gain up to 30% more FOC because of that wider flare at this end. It tapers down to a 4mm at the back end, so it's going to still fly great in the wind, and it's also going to penetrate deeper because there's really very little friction on the back end of the arrow. So that's the full FMJ lineup. So get into your dealer today, or go to eastonarchery.com, and you see our whole line of FMJ arrows.
Hey everybody, when you're talking about innovative products for deer hunting, we often get into scent elimination products. Scent Killer Gold is one of the top ones that I've used over the years because it works on everything. If I'm taking my bow, my gun, my cases, my boots, my backpacks, apply it, dry it, and I know that this is going to kill up to 99% of all human odors that I've left on those various things. Now, that's been around for a few years. A new product, we've heard about ozone in ozone generators, and we know that they do work by attacking scent molecules and rendering them useless. This product is designed to work in spaces that you don't normally think about, but you know that there's odors there. You can smell them when you get into your truck or your RV or inside hunting camp. You know the odors are there, but how do you attack them? Ozone, you go around and spray this throughout the air. You're going to notice a difference almost immediately. This is going to attack the scent molecules in those spaces and allow you to be more odor-free than ever before. Check it out today by logging on to wildlife.com. Hi, I'm Dan Schmidt. For more tips, strategies, and hunting action, be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Thanks for watching Deer and Deer Hunting TV.